So let's talk about this new moon solar eclipse, which is coming up on this Saturday, the 14th of October, 2023. It is happening in the sign of Libra, and it is a new moon, annular solar eclipse, south node eclipse, and this is going to be catapulting us into new directions of all kinds. Because it is a south node eclipse, there is an element of letting go, but it is a paradox because it is a new moon solar eclipse, so there is also a new beginning. But there's a purging that has to occur in order for this new beginning to manifest. You can think of it as almost like an ocean tide. Something is being brought out to sea while something else is being brought up to the shore. And you could also use the analogy of like a power outage, but there is definitely a spiritual element with the south node. Anytime we have the nodes involved, or the south node especially, there is definitely spiritual elements. I always say that eclipses are most definitely fated. They are something that our soul decides upon before incarnating here. And keep in mind, it doesn't have to be in actual physical reality, although a lot of times it can be. It's just going to depend on what exactly is happening in your birth chart. I would look and see where this is actually happening particularly. It's happening at 21 degrees of Libra. So which house is it at? Is it conjuncting or aspecting any other planets? I would use about a 5-degree orb. You can actually widen it because it's an eclipse, so the energies are felt stronger and longer, and it will be good for an entire eclipse cycle. So until our next eclipse, our lunar eclipse in Libra. Because it is a south node eclipse, like I said, there is an element of letting go. And being in the sign of Libra, Libra is our sign that deals with our one-on-one personal connections. So relationships are most definitely highlighted, especially our romantic partnerships, marriages, long-term relationships from past, present, and future are all related to this eclipse. And there is an element of releasing something from the past with the south node in order for new beginnings to occur. Whether you have consciously or unconsciously held on to things from the past, whether it be wounding, or really it's going to depend on what's happening in your birth chart and where this eclipse is happening in your birth chart, what planets it's aspecting, but it's going to be subjective to the individual. And as a collective, we're releasing relationship energies that are no longer serving us and no longer in alignment with our purpose and our mission. One of the first aspects I want to talk about is the inconjunction to Uranus and Taurus. Now, a lot of astrologers don't necessarily look at inconjunctions or quincunxes as major aspects. I do, though, especially with this being the tightest orb in aspect for this eclipse. The inconjunction is a 1-degree orb from Uranus, and think about Uranus and Taurus energy in general. Uranus in Taurus is actually in detriment, and it's basically rewiring how we think things should be structured and how we think we should be building towards our future. It is changing the way in which we see our future. And that inconjunction means that something isn't in alignment. Inconjunctions are when there is no similarities between the two planets involved or the two signs involved, and there is a discrepancy there. Something with the South Node eclipse that we're supposed to be releasing from the past is not in alignment with where we're headed, and it's basically not how we necessarily would have seen things playing out in relation to those past energies that we need to be letting go of. And that is how you can get the inconjunction in alignment, by letting go of those past energies and letting go of what your vision of what you thought things should look like are not in alignment anymore. There is definitely themes of communication because Mercury is conjunct this eclipse too with a 4-degree orb in the sign of Libra. Keep in mind, Mercury is also opposing Chiron. So there's definitely a tendency for miscommunications to happen, although if we can utilize the element of communication and expressing our truest authenticities and where we see ourselves going, what we need from our partners, and what is no longer working for us, then we can utilize the energies of the eclipse by moving through any difficulties we might be facing or that we could subconsciously be facing individually that are affecting our partnerships moving forward. So with that opposition to Chiron, Chiron is in Aries, there's a wound of our ego that could be affecting our communication and or our insights at this time. That being said, on insights, we could be getting downloads or ideas or bursts of information in how our wounds have affected our relationships. So that's something to pay attention to as well. There's also a big square over to Pluto, and this is a 6-degree orb. Pluto just stationed direct, so Pluto is pretty much stationed, barely moving. It is direct, though, which is good news. And a square from Pluto at the end of Capricorn. Remember, Pluto stationed at 27 degrees. So this square is really highlighting basically where we have to restructure ourselves in regards to our relationships. Where was there any unbalance or something that wasn't necessarily fair in regards to how our relationships were structured or how they are currently structured in our current relationships or our future relationships. And there is a force of change upon us with this square. Where has unbalance or unfairness prevented a stable and solid structure, Pluto and Capricorn, and how can we revolutionize those changes in order to build something even stronger? The dispositor of this eclipse is, of course, Venus. Venus rules the sign of Libra, and Venus just moved into her fall position of Virgo, and she's at 5 degrees of Virgo. She is making a sextile to Mars at 1 degree of Scorpio. Keep in mind, Mars just moved into Scorpio. I actually do like this sextile. They won't make an exact sextile, actually, but it's only a 1 degree orb, so it's a pretty prominent aspect. And because Mars is in a water sign, the fixed water sign of Scorpio, and Venus is in mutable Virgo, there's an element here of balancing the practical and emotional. So where, sextiles, we have to actually put in a little bit more work. It's not as easy flowing and easygoing as a trine would be. So there might be a little bit of effort here, but I do really like this aspect for this eclipse because it gives us a supportive energy to our relationships, the masculine and the feminine. Obviously, Mars and Venus are the masculine and the feminine archetypes in the zodiac. So there's an element here of the masculine tapping more into his emotional side and the feminine tapping more into her practical or logical side with Venus and Virgo. Venus is also making an opposition to Saturn in Pisces. Saturn is at the very beginning of Pisces at 0 degrees in retrograde. But that opposition is a little bit, it's challenging. It's not the worst aspect to have, but there is an element of restriction. But we can also think of this as a balancing out, again, practical and spiritual or emotional with Pisces. Pisces is obviously, the spiritual sign of the zodiac or the most, but there is an element here of restriction in regards to how we value ourselves and how we are valuing our emotional state or our spiritual state. We had to find a way to balance this discrepancy out. Balance between logical thinking and spiritual thinking is always needed, and we can't go too far into one side. Either way, I don't think this is a terrible eclipse. There is some challenges. Of course, eclipses are somewhat frowned upon in the astrological and spiritual communities, but it's nothing to be afraid of. Your soul knows exactly what it's doing and how it's working with this eclipse. It's just up to you to be able to tap into this energy and utilize it, especially in regards to our partnerships, being that it's in the sign of Libra. But if you are consciously aware of it and tapped into the energy of your soul, I have no doubt that you will be able to navigate this. I'm not going to tell you not to work with the energy, but I'm not going to tell you to work with it either. That is up to you. And I hope you all have a wonderful eclipse season. If you want to book a personal reading with me, you can message me on any platform and we can set that up for you. I love you.